Thank you, Wolfgang, for the good introduction. So yeah, as Wolfgang said, it's bit of smile design, but it's not this instant 2-3 clicks of a button and you've got this Instagram smile. So this is not what this session is about. It's more about a diagnostic wax up and using a photo just to give us a little bit of guidance and using the articulator and so on. Okay, Wolfgang, can you see my screen?
Yes, I've got a whole bunch of codes there. Okay.
Okay, that's all good.
All good.
All right, now this was submitted to me this week and just for some guidance. Unfortunately, we don't have a lower model. So this is not a good way to start because we always want to have a lower model so we can ascertain whether the bite needs to be opened up or how long the front anterior teeth are meant to be and so on and so forth. So we have to just trick the system a little bit, and I'll demonstrate exactly how and why we're going to be doing this. Now, this is a model which has been cut and put into the center of Blender using the model designer. So that's all good. So there was a picture submitted to me, and that sort of looks like this. And so the dentist has something like this in mind. This is the Red's proportion, or I don't know how they've done that, but we're going to be using the 78% ratio, the Red's proportion ratio. So let's just delete this. Okay, so our mission is to first bring this into we've got it to the center blender, but we want to put it on an articulating plate. So like a mounting plate, for instance, but because we don't have a lower, I'm going to create just a cube. So Shift A, and I'm going to go to mesh and I'll put a little cube in there and I'm going to scale this cube down like this. Okay, so I'm just going to I'm going to pretend this is my lower. Okay, then what we're going to do is we're going to go in the articulator, and there we're going to go to the face bow, and we're going to name this upper. And as you guys know, the codes need names, the objects need names, and this is going to be the lower. Okay, then what we're going to do is we're going to bring in our photo, and so I'm going to just drop this into Blender. Wolfgang, can you see this picture here?
Yes, I can see it. Yeah.
Okay. So this is the photo that's been given to me. Take this back. And now I just want to mention how we do these photos. Wolfgang, maybe your input would be quite good with this one here now.
Yeah, so the idea is the photo needs to be scaled to the Blender millimeter units of measure. So we've got to ascertain a measure on the actual model, then transfer that onto the photo so we can get more or less the correct dimensions. And we will bring the photo in front of the teeth. And by doing that, we can then set the transparency value and then get the new teeth from the tooth library into a more or less a better position.
Yeah, that's right, Wolf. But what we've got here is we've got a photo that's been taken from maybe from the nose, shot downwards, maybe not quite from the nose. But this is like a little bit incorrect because we are working on the campus plane. So we're using the occlusal plane to align it to the model, which is on the campus plane. So now we're looking downwards onto the teeth, which will then give us not 100% accurate, or we won't get ever 100%, but our mission is to superimpose this photo onto the model, and we can't really do that because it's been shot from an angle downwards. So if we actually keep the camera straight on the campus plane, if we can, we're going to get a better result. Okay. So now that we've named these models, upper and lower the cube, what I want to do is I want to create a measurement. So I'm going to click on this button, measure landmarks, and I'm going to look at a landmark, say for example over here and over here. I'm going to rest it over here. So we're looking at 27.25. Then I'm going to take the picture and I'm going to name it. And then what we're going to do is we're going to place it in front of the actual, in front of the model. So just to explain a little bit further, if I look at the model, I'm just going to expose the model because now it has been hidden. So this is where the model is at the moment. Now what we want to do is we want to shrink this model, this picture.
The photo, yes.
Yeah, the image, we want to shrink it. So the way we do this is we've got this ruler here. Okay, now we're going to enter these the length. This is 27.25 millimeters, and we're going to accept that. Okay, now this gives us a tool. Okay, now this tool we're going to be expanding because this tool is 27.25 or whatever. We're going to scale it, and we're going to scale it to the landmarks that we have selected. So S to scale, G to grab. I'm going to place it sort of on the incisors, and I'm looking at this landmark and that one over there. So we're going to scale it a little bit like this. And what that does then, it's going to shrink this photo. So we're going to just something like that. Now, when I go correct front photo, the photo is parented to this, and it's going to shrink it. Okay, so here we go. It's shrunk it. We're not going to use a mask because if you've got a full face photo, we can use the mask, and that superimposes on the face. Wolf, can you just explain with the mask why it's actually quite good to use a mask in the facial?
Yeah, so the mask is a golden proportions mask, and it's got in it a template of the pupils for, you would match the pupils. That gives you a nice horizontal line, and the midline, you can target it towards the middle of the nose and running downwards. So it gives you a better idea where the centrals should be in relation to the midline of the pupils.
That's good. Yeah. So, but because we don't have a full face image, we're going to skip this with the mask, and we're going to move to the next one. Now, what we're doing here is we've got these ovals, and we're going to put this model. So this model, we can shift it. And what I'm looking for is we want to put it to the stopper. The stopper is this one over here. So the front incisors have to meet the stopper, and we want to sort of get the midline correct. Now, the midline is very difficult to see because these teeth are overlapping. So when I'm taking a landmark, I'm looking at this papilla region. So I don't want to put it like this, for example, because it is out. So it becomes a little bit tricky, and it's a little bit of guesswork as well. So we're going to put it like that. This is quite good. And then we're going to move the model in the front. And this, now we're going to move the model downwards and superimpose it over like this. Now we can see a few things, because if you look at the photo clearly, these have already got composite or something on it. So it's not exactly precise. It would have been better having one without the restorations. So we can still rectify this and scale it a little bit, because if it's not 100% the way you want, use S, and we're going to just scale it just a little bit. But we can see how the teeth are running down on the actual STL file, and they're running up towards the photo. And this is why we want to take that photo on the occlusal plane, because this is exactly what we're looking at. All right, so we're going to hide this photo now and go into the waxup. So click hide photo. Now I'm going to go into the waxup module, and we're going to import generic, not the hollow teeth, but the solid teeth. And we're going to quickly assess whether the shape is what we like. And in this case, I don't really like the shape. And then you look for a different tooth library if you've got. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete this. We're going to go into the components module, load the library, and I'm going to look at, I'll have a look at these IDDA female teeth. Now these are hollow and these are solid, and I'm going to append them into the scene. So you're going to do this until you get the right shape that you think. Now these are a little bit on the wide side. They flare out a little bit wide on the side, but just for this Zoom session, we're going to just choose those. Back to the wax up, and we're going to click choose teeth, and we're going to brush what we want to keep, and we're going to delete what we don't want. And then we're going to select all of the teeth and then plonk them into the position like that. So next step is we're going to look at it from the other side. Now in Blender, we've got the ability to open different windows, and this is really quite good because we will then be able to view it from all directions. So for example, I can view it from the side, and when I'm moving one, I can see it from the side as well. So to take it the next level, we want to get the reds proportion. So in the wax up, we've got two buttons. One is the ratio is 78% and the other ratio is 82%. Now that depends on the patient and so on. So let's put in the 78% ratio. So this gives us like a stencil. We're looking at from the front view. And what we want to do is we want to ascertain where this stencil should be, the 78. Notice that this red proportion does not extend all the way, because in Blender we're working with orthographic mode, and the red's proportion is more designed for photographs. So there's a bit of a discrepancy happening here. So maybe in the future someone could invent maybe a little bit of a different proportion that actually is more suitable for digital, but yet it still gives us a really good idea, as you can see. Now, where we move this is going to be a little bit of a compromise, because if we had a lower arch, we can see how they would overlap or where they have to be in the smile zone. Of course, having a facial picture can also help. So if you're placing it too high, that means we're going to have gingivectomies and gum surgery. Or so let us reach a compromise somewhere like that. Now, if you scale this, we've still got the 78%. So it doesn't matter how big or small you make it, it'll always stay. The front incisors are always 78%. So let us head down to something maybe like that. Okay. Yeah. And then we're going to select the teeth, and then we're going to move these teeth to that line. And of course, we can scale these teeth as well if we want to. So S to scale. Okay. Now there's a few things we want to still do, is we want to get an orthodontic arch in this picture.
There was a question about perspective view. Can you work in perspective view?
No, because the perspective, this perspective view, I never use it in Blender. I find it really confusing. And as you can see, the front teeth are very large, and then it just goes towards the outside. So there's no good reference. So we generally speaking, we never use it. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to be looking for in the model design, in the wax up module, we've got something called the ortho template. Now this is quite good. So what we're going to do is we're going to drop it into Blender,
So
exactly like we
this is
did.
just
Yeah,
a normal JPEG that you could actually bring in your own template if you like.
yeah, that's correct. So we're going to select it, make sure it's selected, and we're going to place this into position. Now these templates are really good because it gives us an indication of arches. This is what orthodontics is all about, and especially if you got a very difficult diagnostic wax-up, you want to choose an arch which is sort of similar to what we are working on. So what I'm doing is I'm just moving around and until I actually get an arch which I like. And some patients want their teeth built out wide, yeah, because I want this Hollywood smile and I want these thick veneers on there. And this is why these arches are really, really beneficial. So I'm just going to have a look at one, and this is a true form number 2. And we're going to just move this in line, which is quite close, okay? As you can see, it's quite close. What I'm going to do is I'm going to move this up a bit so it becomes a bit like an orthodontic arch wire going across these teeth. So again, I'm going to look at it from the bottom, and now we can then place these teeth where we want them to go. So I'm going to use the G key, and I'm going to move this outwards like this a little bit. I'm going to move this one out like that a bit. So this is where our individual movements come in. First, we do the big movements of all the teeth, and then we're going to do the individual movements. So I'm using the G and the R key like that, moving it out a bit like this. And here we can see over here the tooth is actually a little bit further back compared to its opposite. So so that the front inside, the tip is on the same line as the other one. Now, in the wax up module, say for example, you want to do one tooth and you want to copy it, you want to copy the tooth to the other one. So just say for example, I'm moving this one like this, and then I want to copy that, but I'm not, I want to mathematically get it correct. So this can easily be done. We're going to go shift left click, and then we're going to click on here where it says mirror tooth to select it. That makes it gray, and then we've got the exact correct angle, and we're going to accept transform. So, and this is quite good, and that works with scale as well. So if you're scaling it, it will take the mirror image of the other one and place it into the correct position. Okay, so something like that. All right, so I think that's probably okay the way we've got it. We're going to hide those 2 templates over here, this little one here. We can hide them now. Now, the next step we want to do is we want to make sure that, actually I'll just unhide this rates proportion again. Now, here, for example, we may want to cut the gum a little bit, and here we want to cut the gum for our diagnostic wax up. So, but before I do that, I think we're going to move this one up a bit. And we're going to move this one up a bit and maybe out a little bit. Yeah. Okay. Wolfgang, you mentioned those teeth are too pointy.
Yeah, I think,
And
yeah, so you can
yeah,
change those.
yeah. So these 2 we're going to bring up a bit. And these 2, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just scale this just a little bit like that, yeah. Yeah,
So
that's looking quite
can you
good.
differentiate with colors here, Michael? Change the model color?
Yeah. So why do you think that's a good idea? Well, with the model color?
Well, you
It's
want to
just
contrast the work that you're doing with, so that you can clearly see the defined edges of with the gingival contour that you're going to be working on next.
Yeah, that's 100% correct. And that's why we would actually do it. So these teeth, I'll just move a little bit forward. Okay, just a little bit. Now, if we need, if we want to bring up the gum a little bit, say for example over here, just to get it correct, we can then go into the sculpting tool, so sculpt, and this is quite good if you get to know these sculpting tools, because we can then perform a sort of a bit of a gum gingivectomy type of thing on the actual model, and that's often we need to do that. So what we can do is we can go draw sharp, for example, and we go on the minus sign, minus, and we can take away, or we can go to the blob, or there's another one here, which I often use, the crease here, and we can crease that inwards a little bit, something like that. So we're just trying to follow that contour there, and we're going to bring that inwards a little bit. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we're going to smooth that out a little bit. Smooth it out like that. Okay, and we're going to do the same on that lateral there. So you can use quite a few. We've got this blob or draw sharp.
If you take a measure of that gum that you're actually pushing to the side, what would that be, just out of a matter of interest?
What is that, Will?
If you were, you could take a measure of that section that you're actually adjusting now, by just using a measure it tool, can't you?
Yeah, you could measure it beforehand before we do it, and then decide how much there's going to be. Or even better still, you can take one model and then duplicate it, so that you've got it, a duplicate models, so that you can actually see what it looks like, and then make a measurement afterwards, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll just take it like that. All right. So learning to sculpt is quite important to do that. Okay, so just deflate like that.
A good question here. Can you use the red's proportional lines to create a cutting tool to then carve out the gingival gingivectomy part of it?
That's actually, I haven't thought about that, and I think that could be a good idea to do that. So you could make that into a cutting tool, and then that's something that we'd have to look into, I think. But yeah.
And if
right.
you wanted to make a cut, like a guide, you could use a splint and layer module to make a layer that can guide you with your gingivectomy.
That's the way. Yeah, that's the way. So finally, what we want to do is we want to adapt these teeth a little bit better to the actual model. So in the waxup, we're going to click on this one, edit mode, and that will put it into face select mode. And then what we can do is we can gently grab, we can grab and change this a little bit, but we don't want to do too much, because otherwise we're going to affect the shape of the tooth. But what we do need to do is we need to sort of adapt it to the model. And so to be able to do that, I'm going to look at it from behind, and we're going to left click, and we're going to use the G key, and then we can adapt this sort of to the to the model like this. Okay, so that we can get a little bit of a like a flow between, you know, when we're printing the diagnostic model. Okay.
Can you use the sculpting tools as well here, Michael?
Yep, so let's do the sculpting tool. So we're going to sculpt, and we can bulge that out like that. Okay. Okay, so this is basically how we do it. If you then want to say, for example, that the canines, Wolfgang, you had mentioned earlier, are a little
Yes.
bit sharp.
Yeah.
So in that case, we're going to deselect the magnet tool and then select the proportional editing tool. Then what we're going to do is we can go into edit mode, and then we can make sure the magnet tool is off, and then we can just simply change the shape of these. So we just grab and then we just change it a little bit.
So instead of using sculpting tool here, it's probably better or easier just to work with a mesh.
I think so. I think so. So here we're just going to pull that out a little bit to change the shape. And that's sort of basically it. Note that here we've got this discrepancy between, you know, the distal of the canine, and we can just stick that onto the mesh over here like that.
So
Just using
the question is it
the
better to
GP.
work in edit mode here than working with sculpting tools?
I think it's a combination. It's a combination of all of them. Like, for example, the contact. I'm not quite happy with the contact. I'm going to go into edit mode. Make sure you know the difference between the proportional editing and the magnet, and when to use what. Because here, for example, I can just pull this a little bit this way like that.
So that would be quite difficult to do or tricky to do with the sculpting tool. And it's you could probably over sculpt something very easily. So if you're pulling the mesh, you've got a better idea of where it's going to end up.
Yeah. So we've got to be careful with the sculpting, but I think it's just a matter of practice and knowing what sculpting tools they are. Because when you go into the sculpting tool, the menu here has so many things. What I often use mostly is the simplify, so that it simplifies the mesh structure. And then we've got the inflate and deflate. And there's one other thing that you guys need to be aware of, and that's the Dynotopo. Now, what is that? That needs to be selected, because what this does, it remeshes it while we're smoothing or sculpting. So as you're moving the brush, it'll make a new layer, a sculpted layer. Now, when you flip down the resolution, the smaller you go, the coarser the mesh is going to be. So if you make this on 10, for example, and you're choosing simplify, so this is on 10, you will notice that the Dynotopo is going to make it extremely smooth. So in edit mode, you can actually see. So I just have to get out and work on the correct tooth. So here, sculpt, and set this to 10, which it is. You'll see how smooth it actually gets. Okay, so in edit mode, tab, you'll see it's very fine. But when we go, if we select Dynotopo, and it's like 2, for example, it's coarse. You see how coarse it gets. So this is it's very important to understand what the Dynotopo actually does. So number 6 is quite a good mesh structure. So if you ever you're sculpting, put it so like number 6 or number 4 or so on.
What about surface topography if you wanted to add a little bit? What
surface,
sculpting tools would you use? Would you use like the crease tool maybe?
oh, like very fine lines and stuff.
Yeah,
Wolfgang,
yeah,
is that what you're talking about?
yeah.
Okay, so you're talking about remodeling the teeth. So if you go into sculpt mode and then you take something like draw sharp, or you take the crease tool and you set this to say 10, and then you right click and make the radius quite small, then you can crease it. But so this takes a little bit of practice. You can see how it's been creased. Can you see?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can do quite a lot. You can do your own, sculpting and surface texture if you want to. But so you've got to be and set it very fine. Then you see how I've just created a few lines there. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So that canine 1-3, would you tilt that one still a little bit, or not? Not really, not necessary.
I think we could tilt it. So from the front view, just go R to rotate and bring it out a little bit if you want to.
Yeah.
Like that. So it all depends on how you want to shape it. Now let's just have a look and see what it looks like with the photo. So we're going to go back into the articulator and unhide the photo and view it from the front section, and we can see sort of what the result is heading to. Okay.
So how would you normally export something like this for 3D printing?
So just select all of the teeth and the model, go to File, Export STL File, and then click the Selection Only box. That's very important. Selection Only, call it something and export, and then send it to your printer.
Okay, so one more question is, if the teeth are jutting too far forward, can we adjust the teeth on the model before we do the wax up?
Adjust the teeth before the wax up.
So if one of the teeth is quite prominently leaning buccally forward, do we have the ability digitally just to trim it back a little bit?
Oh, you're talking about, okay, I understand. So you've got these teeth. Let's just hide them before you even start, because
That's right.
what we are doing, we are using the additive technique, isn't it?
Yes.
But what happens if we want to subtract a little bit? Okay, that's quite a good question. So let me just bring this up again, wax up. Okay, so we can see that the 2-1 is sticking like, forward, and you just say you wanted to reduce that. So there's 2 ways. We can use the bleach module, or you can use a patch up for like little bits and pieces. So we're going to select it, and then we're going to place it where we want to carve it, scale it, Shift D, and we're going to create it. Think of it like a burr in the lab. So we're taking a rosette burr, for example, and we're going to be reducing this one by using Shift D like that. And then we're going to click on carve, and it'll carve there. And then what we're going to do is we're going to just smooth it down, sculpt it down, like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you could do this similar with the bleach module. You're painting on a layer, but then I suppose you've got to modify that and turn it into surface.
Yeah. Okay. So assuming we were using the bleach model. So okay, I'll just demonstrate. You're still recording this, eh? Well,
Yes, I am.
so we're going to select that and paint on a layer, and you can sort of pre-make tooth preparations like that as well, I suppose. So we're painting on a layer like that. And then what we want to do is we want to use that for a cutting tool.
So would you just adjust the depth at this point? How deep is it going to cut into the tooth?
Well, at the moment it's set to 2 millimeters, which means it's going to cut. This is 1 millimeter on the inside and 1 millimeter on the outside. Okay, so it would cut 1 millimeter away. Okay, so that may be too much. Let's set this to 1.4. So that's would be 70 microns, isn't it?
Yeah, 0.7.
Yeah. So we can essentially take away as much as we want. We can actually do the whole tooth to make a tooth preparation. So in any way, we're going to then, now there's a bit of a technique. If you've got the splint module, you'd make a layer then, but we don't have the splint module here. Actually, we do, I think. Yeah, we do have the splint module. But for those of you that don't have the splint module, what we're going to do is we're going to go into object mode, and then we're going to make this into a mesh. So go to convert to mesh. Then what we're going to do is we're going to go to the edit, and we're going to shift left click the model, go to the Boolean tool, and we're going to create a difference, and that'll cut it away like that. And then of course we would go in and give it a quick smoothing, quick sculpt like this. Okay. So here we've actually carved away, and we would do that in the dental lab as well, because we take a burr and we would then just nip off for diagnostic wax up where we need to take away.
So this model could actually be printed as well, and then you can just mark where the adjustments have been made.
Yeah, correct. And I think from outset, planning is very important, because when we get a model and we do a diagnostic wax up, we don't really go straight on and plonk teeth on. We'd always look at the model first. So we'd have the we'd have the red proportion, for example, and we'd bring it in, and then okay, now it's not exactly aligned according to the plane, but we can then prepare before we put the teeth on. And that's really good. Like here, for example, we can carve away the gum exactly like we've done over here. We could carve away the gum a little bit and the tissue over here as well. And then we put our diagnostic teeth on top of it.
Yeah. Excellent.
So I think pre-planning is the key. So if there's any questions, that would be a good time to ask.
You could probably stop screen share, Michael.
Excellent.